Catherine's Crafty History channel.
Hello, welcome to Catherine's Crafty History. My name is Catherine and I am a Blue Badge tour guide in London and the surrounding area. Now today I thought we'd talk a little bit about Roman London. For those who don't know, London is the capital city of England and it is nearly 2,000 years old. Our story begins with an invasion by the Romans. But before we go on, who exactly were the Romans? Well, they were a civilization or a society group of people who originated from Rome, as the name suggests. Romans, Rome. Now these people were ruled by incredibly powerful men who constantly wanted to prove themselves to their people and to their opponents. They proved themselves by invading other countries and conquering them. And so they created a huge empire, a Roman Empire. And these people we know as emperors, the leader of the Romans. So the aim of these emperors was to have world domination. And that's one of the reasons they decided to travel all the way to Britain and cross the English Channel. They also thought, they've got a lot of natural resources like tin, gold, silver over in Britain, and I want to be able to control them for myself. The first emperor to try and conquer England was Julius Caesar in 54 BC. BC meaning before Christ, so before zero. That's over 2,000 years ago. He arrived, but he had to leave. He couldn't stay, and so he managed to invade England and Britain, but he did not manage to conquer it. This happened 99 years later by the great Roman Emperor Claudius in 43 AD. That is the date we say when Britain was conquered by the Romans. Now, he sent over Claudius 40,000 men and they landed on the southeast coast of England in a place we now call Richborough. They travelled through England into the mainland until they came across England's longest river, the River Thames. They were on the south side of the river and the land was very marshy at one point. And they looked over the river, nice and narrow, and they saw on the other side this higher ground, sort of these two hills, and they thought this is the perfect place to ford the river. Ford the river meaning they built a bridge, they crossed over, and in this land they founded a Roman town, which they called Londinium. So we today call it London, but it was founded as Londinium. Much cooler, I think. So Roman towns, they followed a similar format to each other. They had certain buildings that always were found in one. They were ruled, or I should say governed, by a governor, someone put in place as the emperor's right-hand man, because he couldn't be in everywhere because his empire was so big. And I have made a model of Londinium. We're going to take a look at that now and have a look at some of the specific buildings that you would find in a Roman town. So here we are with the model of Londinium. First of all, we can see this blue water here. This is the River Thames. Those of you who have been to London will know that the river isn't actually that blue in colour. But that's because London is built on a bed of clay, so it gives it this sort of brown, murky colour to the water. But for the sake of the model, we'll have the water as blue. This side here is where the marshy land was, where they arrived to and then looked over the river and saw this higher ground and thought, this is where we shall build our bridge. So here we have our bridge crossing the River Thames, London Bridge, which still exists today in name, London Bridge, one of our most famous bridges. And here we have it, Londinium. Now the first thing you'll notice is this wall going all the way around the city. This wall would have been built for security and also for introducing taxes. It's sort of easy to know who's coming in and out of the city if there's a wall. So you see these flags I put up. These are all gates which lead off to different parts of Britain. The Romans were very advanced in their road building. They were very good at building strong, straight roads leading exactly where they wanted to go to. Now also, if you take a little closer look at this wall, you'll notice that I made it sort of greyish colour, and then you'll also see these bands, these lines of sort of an orangey colour. That was intentional because that's what the Romans did. To their walls, they would add these terracotta coloured bands, with these bricks in between. We're not sure entirely why they did that. Perhaps it's because it added a bit more stability. But also it could be for aesthetic reasons, to make it look good. So here's our wall. And I said that we'd be focusing on some of the buildings in particular that you find in a Roman town. The first one is this one. So imagine you're arriving into Londinium, crossing over the bridge, you go up the road, and here you arrive at this great, grand, big square with these buildings around it. This is the Forum. And this Forum is where people would go to gather. And the most important building in the Forum is this tall old looking one here, the Basilica. You go to the Basilica and the Forum in order to pay your taxes. So if the governor who we spoke about, he rules over the city, you would go to the procurator in order to pay your taxes. So there's lots of hustle and bustle always happening here at the Forum and at the Basilica. Talking of the governor would live in this big, great palatial villa near to the water's edge. Later today we're going to be making some mosaics, and this is exactly what would be filled in the house of the governor. Beautiful mosaics, sort of glass mosaics. Another place to have a look at mosaics is in the Roman baths, which are represented by this little building here. And the Roman baths is a great place to get clean, but also to have a good old gossip with your friends. It was a big event going to the Roman baths. What you do, you go in and you'd get completely naked, leave all your clothes in the changing room. And there are 3 different baths that you would go to. The first bath is called the tepidarium. Now this is a nice warm bath to sort of ease you in to the cleansing process. While you're in the baths, depending who you are, but you could have a servant come and use a striggle, which is a type of tool, metal tool, curved metal tool, and then can be used to sort of scrape off all the excess skin. So once you're sort of warmed up in the tepidarium, then you'd move on to the caldarium.
Ooh, see that steam, it's lovely.
Caldo in Italian meaning hot. So this was very, very hot water. So you'd be plunged into there. And then, once you've done that, you quickly move on to the frigidarium. Frigo is fridge in Italian, so very, very, very cold water. It's a nice contrast to the very, very hot water.
It's cold.
As well as the baths, you could also go into the hypocaust, essentially underfloor heating. They were very advanced, the Romans. We've already talked about the roads slightly. So what they would do, when they were building the baths, they would build columns, so different stones into columns, and then they'd place the floor on top of these columns, so it wasn't solid ground under the floor. Now, in the sort of basement with these columns, they'd have a fire, and this fire would warm up these columns, and the air, there was so much air underneath the floor that it could rise to the top and create the floor nice and warm for them to walk on. So they had all sorts of advancements. Not only that, but they had sewer systems. We've already talked about their governing system. It was very advanced with taxes and things like that. So a great sort of civilization to come to Britain and bring Britain into sort of a new age. Now, something else that the Romans really liked, other than bathing themselves, was going to see lots of action. And they do this here with this round building. Some of you might have a guess what it might be. It is an amphitheatre. So here in London, we have the remains of a Roman amphitheatre. Now, our amphitheatre could fit around 6,000 people, and it was a great place for everyone to come and watch things like public executions, gladiators, which are sort of often their slaves, fighting each other, sort of the crowds going crazy. This was their entertainment. They didn't have TV, they didn't have internet, so they'd go to the amphitheatre and watch these big shows put on. So man fighting man, but also beast fighting man, and or beast fighting beast. Very exciting stuff. This last section that we want to look at here, this sort of rectangle, would be the fort. Now, as well as having this wall for protection, they also had soldiers who lived in Londinium. These soldiers in particular, though, they were ceremonial soldiers. So there wasn't a fixed regiment who always stayed at Londinium. Lots of different regiments would come in and they'd switch over who was looking after Londinium and the governor. They sort of worked side by side to protect the city. So now it's time for craft, and we're going to make our mosaic. Remember this list that we saw at the beginning? If you haven't gathered the things we're going to need for the craft, now is a great time to do so. So I hope you've gathered everything from the list and you're excited and ready to make our Roman mosaic. Now, first of all, we want to grab some cardboard, but maybe you've run out of cereal boxes. That's no problem. You could just use some normal paper as well. Now, first things first, we're going to draw our design. And you can choose whatever you like, but I've gone for a nice Roman urn. So grab your pen and draw our nice urn with nice handles as well. There we go. Now put that to one side when you've done that, and we're going to actually make the mosaics. Now mosaics usually are made out of glass. They're little squares made out of different coloured glass which can be placed down to make pretty patterns. I don't have any glass lying around. What I have found is some coloured foam. So that's what I'm using. And you want to cut it out into strips, just like this, and then cut them into squares. Now, do not worry if you don't have any foam. There's loads of different ways that you can make little squares, coloured squares. You could perhaps grab an old magazine, make sure it's been read first, flick through it, there's all sorts of colours you'll find in there. Or maybe even make your own. Grab another piece of paper and colour it in. The aim is just to make coloured squares, just like all of these. So that is our aim. So, once we've done that, we can start the fun bit of gluing. So you want to grab your PVA glue and your paintbrush and just start to glue. First of all, I would start with the shape in the middle, so our because it's best, in my opinion, to make that one block colour so that stands out nicely, and then you can do the surrounding area multicoloured to give it that really sort of wow factor to it. So keep painting like this. Now once you've done that, you can choose whichever colour you want as the main standout colour. I have chosen yellow. So I'm going to go for it with my yellow, and you just start at the top. Now just to show you, this is what it looks like if you are using cuts out pieces of magazine. You see, it just makes a similar effect, so it's just as good. You don't need this foam if you don't have any. You can always cut them slightly to really make it accurate, to fit it into shape. That's a good idea as well. And also do the handles. And so then once you've done all of that in one single colour, then you can get your paintbrush again and you can start doing strips. Do a long strip of glue. Just makes it easier while gluing onto the card or the paper directly rather than each individual mosaic. PVA glue lasts quite a bit of time, so it gives it time. And then you can just start gluing on. I like the alternate colours personally, but you can do whatever design you like. And then you have something eventually that will look a bit like this. This block colour of the urn, this nice Roman urn, pottery found all over London, even today, that belonged to the Romans, and then like this. I hope you enjoy making this craft, and if you can, try and show me how you get on with them on my Facebook page, Catherine's Crafty History. So I hope you've enjoyed making your Roman mosaic and learning a little bit more about Roman London, about why they came in the first place and how they lived in their towns. Romans really made a huge impact in Britain through culture, through language, through religion, through the ideas of law. But all good things must come to an end, and by the early 400s, Roman Britain was under attack by other people who wanted to conquer this land, and with the rest of the empire also under threat, by around 410, Roman Britain was no more. Now, next time we're going to learn about another very important invasion, and when Britain was conquered once again, when we talk about the Normans and in particular the Battle of Hastings. See you then. Bye.
Catherine's Crafty History Channel.